So we're going to move on to the last three assignments. Like there's 4 animation motion methods that are on your sheet, okay, that I gave you. I'm going to show you the next 3. So think about it. Yesterday I showed you 1. I was actually able to show you 3. Guys, stay off the computer. Today I'm going to show you 3. So they're actually really simple. Okay, we're going to go over them. This is going to be like a facepalm moment in a way. It's because you're going to be like, you mean I can do it that way? And you're going to be frustrated. You still have to do the rectangle, even though I'm going to show you an easier way to do it. I want you to do all 4. So I need to say that right now too. I'm going to show you a much easier way to do the rectangle than the frame by frame, but you still have to do it frame by frame, okay? And you're going to see why in a second. So I'm just going to take them straight down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I guess, yeah, we got 5 ways of doing it. There's really 4 animation methods here. The 5th one is a hybrid. It's a combination, as you'll see. So, so the first one we did is frame by frame. We did that the other day in the previous demo, so that makes sense. So what I want you to do here is in the Flash animation, I want you to go in and name the layers what you're doing. So frame by frame, okay? And that just makes it a little easier, and you can move this. At least I thought you were able to move it. Well, anyway, should be able. Oh, there you go. For some reason, okay, you can be able to move this so you can see. So what you need to do, and this is a lot like Photoshop, you need to keep everything on a separate layer. So that's really huge, okay? Really huge. So we're gonna once I've finished my frame by frame, which of course in this demo it's not finished yet. There's a little lock here. I'm going to lock that layer. So now I can't accidentally mess it up. That's huge. When you don't want to work on something, you don't want to mess something up, lock it. Lock the layer. Trust me, you will thank me for that little tip. Or, and most likely, you're going to forget that little tip, and then you're going to curse yourself because you're going to start screwing up layers. And it gets pretty bad. Some of you did that in Photoshop, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. So now I'm going to go down here and I'm going to create a new layer. Okay, so click, we got a new layer coming up, and this one is our classic tween. So it's nice and easy, classic, and I'll even put tween in there, but you don't have to, just write classic. And it says make a simple object. So again, I can just make another object. Let's change colors so we don't get them confused. So I'll just make it blue, and I can make another rectangle, or maybe an oval. How about that? So I'll just make an oval. There we go. Now with a classic tween, the procedure is very similar. You're going to highlight it, right-click, and create a symbol. So now what I'm going to do is I'm also going to name my symbol by the tween that I'm using for this case. So I'm just going to say, or blue circle, and then maybe I'll say classic, so that I know it's what I used for the classic tween. The reason why it's really important to start doing that and naming your symbols intelligently instead of untitled 1, untitled 2 is because you're going to build a library over here, okay? Now right now it's only got 2 objects. That's not that big of a deal. But if you were to do a bigger animation, you can have thousands of symbols. Thousands of symbols. You can also have symbols within symbols. Within symbols, within symbols, within symbols, okay? It can get very confusing very quickly. So if you name everything correctly, then you don't sit there for a whole period befuddled trying to figure out what is going on with your animation simply because you've got the wrong object. You see what I mean? So it's very important. So I'm going to rename my rectangle frame by frame, okay? In fact, I should call it green rectangle. There we go. So I got green rectangle frame by frame. Now, this is where it gets fun, okay? So let's say I want to take this blue circle and I want to move it in a straight line, right? And before, you had to divide it in half and do a keyframe like every, 15 frames and then every 5 frames and so on and so forth. It's so much easier now. So what we're going to do is I've got my 60 frames here. I'm going to go forward in time to 60, and I'm going to insert a new keyframe, and then I'm going to move it down. So I've now set the new keyframe here. So now it jumps just like it did before. But now here's the difference. I'm going to right click on this sucker and I'm going to create a classic tween. Ready? Now a tween is a word that comes from animation history. And you may sit there and go, animation history? You know, like there's such a thing? Oh yeah. In fact, who do we know is the grandfather, father, whatever, of modern animation methods? Walt Disney. What did Walt Disney do that was so huge? There's two things. What's the one that you all know? Starts with an S. You've probably heard it before, but you just forget. The storyboard, where he lays out the story first on a big bulletin board. He just lays out these massive keyframes. Okay, he lays out the keyframes, okay, on a board so that everybody knows what's going on. That's number one. They still use storyboards in every major movie and animation made today. Okay, I don't know of a movie, a professional, you know, big budget movie made yet that does not have a storyboard. I haven't heard of one. I'm sure there's a few, but it generally, if you don't use a storyboard, your movie's going to stink. Okay, because nobody has any idea of what's going on. Two, the other thing that he did is part of that, he then used this method that happened in the early 1900s, right, what they called distribution of labor, right? Henry Ford. What did Henry Ford invent? Not the automobile, the assembly line. And the assembly line is essentially the distribution of labor, right? The specialization, you guys have heard those terms maybe in your history classes, okay? It applies here too. What ended up happening is he would have keyframe artists. So if you want Donald Duck to walk across the room, you'd have a keyframe artist who would draw him at the beginning of the motion and at the end of the motion. So he'd do 2 frames. Those were your keyframes. They'd then hand those drawings to the artists that they called the in-betweeners. And the in-betweeners would draw all the frames in between, tracing the way that the first artist drew Donald Duck. That was the way to move the animation along quickly and also keep Donald Duck looking the same. If you have one guy do one scene and then another guy do another scene and they didn't communicate, Donald Duck would change appearance slightly from one scene to the next, right? So you have one guy doing all the keyframes so that Donald Duck always looks the same, and then you have your tween artists filling in all the frames in the middle, just using his drawings as to trace them and as a target, and just moving the arms and the legs and whatever. Well, now your computer is your tweener. The computer tweens for you. So instead of having to do all these millions of keyframes and stuff like that, you just right-click, go Create Classic Tween. Boom. And it creates all the frames for you like that. Done. See, I told you it was going to be a facepalm moment, huh? All right, yeah, seriously, now you're like, oh, seriously? I went through all that crap and I could have just right-clicked and been done with it? Yes. But it gets even better. So that's number 2, okay? That's number 2. That's your classic tween. Number 3 is a shape tween. Shape tweens are cool. So now, again, keeping with my method, I'm going to lock this layer, create a new one, and I'm going to double click and I'm going to call it my shape tween. Okay, done. And now I'm going to create another object here. So we're going to do a rectangle. I'll just do another rectangle. And we'll just put it right here. Whoops, I didn't want it that color. Let's do let's do a burgundy kind of color there. So now I've got that red rectangle. Now here's what's cool. We don't have to do a symbol for the shape tween. We don't have to. Because by its very nature, the shape tween only works on shapes. It doesn't work on symbols. Now, if you create a symbol out of your shape, you can then double click into the symbol, like I showed you in the other previous demo, and then you can do a shape tween inside the symbol. But for our purposes today, we want the shape tween to be out on top. We don't want it to be hidden away inside a symbol, because a symbol can contain all sorts of stuff. So we're just going to do the shape tween right on top. So here's what we do. You'll notice that as I created the shape tween, because all my other tweens lasted 60 frames, I now have full 60 frames worth of animation. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab the white arrow tool and I'm going to go in here, okay, and I can modify the shape of this object. But first, what do I need to do? Create a new keyframe. Because if I start modifying the shape, even if I go to 60, if I go in here and I modify the shape now, I haven't created a new keyframe yet, so all I've done is modify my original keyframe, which is not what I want to do. So let's undo. I'm going to right-click, insert a keyframe. Now, I'm going to modify my shape. Okay? First keyframe, second keyframe. See that? Now I right-click, and I insert a motion tween. What do you mean it can't be tweened? That's new in this version. You didn't used to have to create a symbol for it. That's interesting. Oh, I did? Shape tween. There we go. Okay, thank you. I was selecting the wrong thing. Well, I'm glad somebody else is paying attention. Now look what it does. Now there's some major limitations to the shape tween. Number one, you have to set up all of your points beforehand. So in other words, I can't now go to the second keyframe and start adding handles and stuff that weren't there in the beginning. If I wanted curves, I needed to do that first. Okay, so let me go back and I'll show you. So I'm going to get rid of my keyframe here. Okay, so now I've got it. I need to convert my points, first things first. And I can move the handles so that it appears like a rectangle, okay? But I have to have the handles present in order to do anything with them in the shape tween. Does that make sense? It won't add them in the second keyframe. If you just add them in the second keyframe, it'll freak out, which is not good, right? So if I do this, okay, now I've got my handles there. If I now go and add my keyframe and then go back in and click, now what I can do is I can have it change its shape with the handles. I may not even move a point. Okay, and I can create kind of a cool shape. And now when I tween it, okay, it still does some funky stuff, doesn't it, in the middle? So it's not perfect. But my point is, the shape tween has some major limitations, so don't go nuts here. Do something really simple, okay? Just get the idea of it. We'll use shape tweens very practically later on. I might show you some methods on how to use shape tweens. They work really well for like a face. If you want an eyelid to blink, you can use a shape tween to do that, okay? There's some really nice ways you can use shape tweens, really simple, but they have to be simple. They can't be really complicated, okay? So that's number 3. Number 4 is a motion tween. Now a motion tween is very different in procedure from all the others. So pay attention. So first, in keeping with my procedure, I'm going to lock that layer. Now I'm going to create a new one, and I'm going to type motion tween. Okay, and now I'm going to create another object. So I'm just going to keep simple objects. So let's do another oval. Let's choose a different color here. So we'll go with a, I'm running out of colors. Let's go yellow, and I'll move it this way. So now I have a yellow circle. What do I need to do next before I start doing anything? Make it into a symbol. Thank you very, very much. That's excellent. So I make it into a symbol, highlight, right-click, convert to symbol. So now I'm going to call this yellow circle and motion tween. Now, here's where it's different. In the previous, all the others, you created the new keyframe first. With the motion tween, you don't do that. With the motion tween, you create the tween first. And this is a vastly different method here. So I right-click and I create the motion tween. Now you'll notice the line kind of goes blue. So notice each one has its own colors. Okay? So regular keyframes without any tweens, just gray. Then you've got the classic tween is kind of this pale bluish color. Your shape tweens are green, and your motion tweens are like kind of a nice sky blue. Okay? Now, the way this works is I go forward in time, okay? Let's say I want the circle to end up over here. I just move it. And now, by moving it, all of a sudden it gives me a path. Okay, so this should look familiar. And you'll notice up here that there's a tiny little keyframe that just showed up. See that? It's not a keyframe like normal. But Flash will, anytime you move an object, Flash creates a new keyframe for you. So, sorry for the interruption there. So anyway, so as you can see, it's got this path here. And anytime you move, so let's say I move to 30 and I now move my circle, notice it changes and it adds a new keyframe. Okay? That's pretty cool. You've got to be careful with this though, because it creates a keyframe anytime you move the object. You can end up creating a ton of keyframes without knowing it. And the general rule of thumb is the less keyframes that you can use to get your motion, the better off you are, right? It will look smoother. But here's the other cool thing about motion tweens, okay? They do not have to be straight lines. So with the black arrow tool, you can just go in and notice what's going to happen here when I go over the line. See how it's got that little curved line to the bottom of the arrow? Okay? That's telling me that I can grab this and I can bend it. Okay? So what I might want to do is not bend that, but let's say I want the ball to look like it falls and then bounces. Whoops, missed. Something like that. Pretty cool, huh? Now I can also adjust the timing of that to make the fall look faster and the bounce look slower just by grabbing this keyframe. Which way should I move it to make the fall look faster? To the left, very good. So if I move this keyframe over to here, now what's going to happen is instead of taking 30 frames from here to here, it's only going to take 20. So it's going to look faster. And then the bounce is actually going to look slower, you see? And you can do even more. So like I can take this here, and then what I'll do is I'll move it just a tiny bit, creates a keyframe, and now I can go in. You have to command click on a keyframe. So you hold the command key down to get to the individual keyframe, and I can kind of move it over a little bit to adjust the timing again so that it goes really slow there and then it speeds up as it goes to the right, or to the left, I mean, as it's falling down. Pretty cool, huh? Okay? You can also adjust keyframes or the path of the object using the white arrow tool, and then you click on the path and looky here, we've got handles just like anything else. So I can really specifically change the points or the paths on my, or the handles on my path to make it bounce a little differently or to make it go into a different location. It's really, really, really cool the amount of controls that you have with a motion tween. Okay? I mean, it really is. What you can do with it is just awesome. Okay? Now, so that's number 4. Number 5 is a hybrid. Ready? So number 5 is what I call a nested tween. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to follow the same procedure. Lock my layer, create a new one, double click, nested tween. Let's create another rectangle. Let's make this one black. All right, that'll work. Black. Black on, so it's got black and a black outline. That's actually probably perfect. So now I'm just going to create another rectangle here. Now I'm going to convert it to a symbol. Okay, call this black rectangle, and I'm going to call this nested tween. Okay, boom. So now you can see my library is building over here, isn't it? Okay. So now I'm just going to do a motion tween on the black rectangle. So create a motion tween, and you can do something more complicated, I guess. But I'm just going to go simple, and we're just going to move it up to here. Done. So I created my motion tween, right-clicked, created my motion tween. Then I moved it, created my new keyframe, and you can see that it's just going in a different direction. Now here's where it gets interesting. Ready? Pay attention. I'm going to take my black arrow tool, my selection tool. I'm going to double-click on the symbol. Now notice what just happened. First off, look here. Scene 1, and then it tells me I'm now inside the symbol. And look up here. I have a whole new timeline. Oh. You can do animations within animations. Oh yeah. So, it gets really powerful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click here, and I'm going to insert a new keyframe for my black rectangle. Grab my white arrow tool, and on that new keyframe, I'm just going to change the shape a little bit. Okay? Just like that. Now, I right-click, and I add my shape tween. So now my rectangle, inside the symbol, the shape of the rectangle is being animated. And on the outside of the symbol itself is being moved with a motion tween. So what's going to happen is those two animations are going to play simultaneously. Ready? So to get back into the scene, I click here, back into the scene. Notice the shape tween goes away. All you see is the motion tween. Notice as I scroll through the timeline, you do not see the shape tween. But if I go File, Publish Preview, and I just do a flash preview, or I think I can also go Test Movie. That's what I want to do. Test Movie. I'm just going to test movie. Test. Boom. It builds it, and now we can see the motion or the shape tween that's happening inside the symbol, happening at the same time that the motion tween is happening in the main timeline. Does that make sense? Okay? It gets kind of complicated, but in reality, it's not that complicated. Think of it like the movie Inception. It's a dream within a dream, for those of you who've seen the movie. Okay? You have a shape tween running inside the motion tween. It's not even running inside the motion tween. It's running inside the symbol, and the symbol has another tween on top of that. So in reality, when I animate these objects, I'm not animating the shapes themselves. I'm animating their symbols. And then inside the symbol, I can animate the shapes themselves as well. This means that I can add spins. I could do all sorts of amazing things and have a symbol, an animation running inside a symbol. So if I wanted to do a guy running across the frame, right? I can build inside the symbol, I can do an animation of him just running in place. And then I jump to the stage outside the symbol, and I just do a motion tween of him moving across the screen. And now he's running in place inside the symbol, but because I take the symbol and move it across, he looks like he's running across the screen. See? You can use it to all sorts of good uses. Okay? It really does get very, very complicated, but it also is very powerful and very cool. Any questions? So right here, I just did the assignment for you in front of your face. The last 4 exercises will take about as long as the first one. And I knew that going into this. But you still have to do the square that's jumping, okay, my square frame by frame, you still have to do it, even though there is an easier way. Got it? Okay.